Okay, hi guys, welcome back to another MLS updater with me, Mike, and I'm here with Larry once again. Larry, how you doing?
Doing well, Mike. Doing well. Obviously, getting ready for the big U.S. Men's national team game on Tuesday against Iran. Obviously, yeah, I know you've been paying attention to the media. It seems like they're talking about everything but the game. But I know we'll be eager to break that down as well as all the other games over the weekend with MLS players featuring.
Definitely, yeah, it's going to be there's lots more added to that game. We'll just have to see how the young USMNT side deal with everything going on around the game as well. Be very interesting to see what happens. And yeah, like I say, we come to sort of the end of these 4 game days that we've been enjoying with the World Cup, and we come down to the final group games. But over the weekend, sadly, we saw Canada eliminated from the World Cup. It's been a long time coming for them to qualify. They've probably done so 4 years earlier than planned. It could be said. Alphonso Davies getting their first ever World Cup goal. So it was a big iconic moment for the side, but just couldn't quite hold on and cope with the quality of Croatia, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was actually funny because I was watching the game with my best friend whose family is actually from Croatia, so he was obviously amped up for that and hopefully trying to get a bounce back result from the draw they had the first game.
Yeah.
And once Alfonso Davies scored, he walked right out of the room. It was kind of just like he walked right out of the room, and I'm like, oh, here we go, like here we go. Canada's gonna pull the upset, but we all knew that I think Croatia eventually would kick things, turn things around. The amount of experience they have in the team, and
Yeah.
Kramaric had 2 goals, Lavalia had a goal, Perisic had 2 assists. So a lot of veterans in that group, and they were able to turn it around. And a little bit disappointing from Canada because they started off really well, hit on the counter on that goal. Buchanan, the former Revolution player, with the
Yeah.
assist, and but then after that, it was kind of, where did they go after that? Canada. It seemed like we know how great they are on the counter, but it just seemed they couldn't get anything going in possession. And Croatia, obviously really good technical team. They're going to punish you. So they got the result. And but I think still a lot of credit has to go to Canada for obviously getting to Qatar, like you said, maybe earlier than expected, and winning the CONCACAF group over Mexico and the US. And now for them it's just about, maybe getting a win in that final game, and ending their stay with a little bit of pride.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely lots of things they've been able to learn about the World Cup, having been away for so long. It's great for players like Atiba Hutchinson to be able to get in there before rather than having to wait till. I mean, if he waited till 2026, he'd be the oldest player ever in the World Cup. So, but they've got a lot to work on. Herdman got them amped up for the game, and you thought 2 minutes in, they're taking the lead. Wow, can they do this? But yeah, it got a bit too much, and it's a bit like there's some similarities. Obviously, the quality of the team is very different. But when they had their warm up against Bahrain with full of MLS players, they just struggled to get things going in the final third. They seem to have overcome that with the sort of the European based players coming in for these 2 games. But every so often there's those little difficulties going forward. But there was a few standout players. One I'll mention is Alistair Johnson, who's been linked with moves to Celtic. It's been all over transfer mark. Manuel Vefs and Tom Boga have obviously reported on it. These 2 games, despite not coming away with wins, defensively, Alistair Johnson's been a big player for them, hasn't he? And it's really stood out.
No, yeah, for sure. I think once I first kind of heard that the rumblings of that of him linked with Celtic, I kind of thought it was a great move for him because, I know a lot of people probably think, the Scottish Premiership maybe not the up there obviously with the top 5 leagues in Europe, but I think for at a competitive standpoint, it's obviously really competitive. Been able to watch, not only the Old Firm games but also some of the other teams. And we've seen some other, whether it's U.S. men's national team players kind of excel there, whether it's, I know Timmy Weah had a loan at Celtic a few seasons back and did pretty well. Malik Tillman's on loan with Rangers, and James Sands still on loan with Rangers. So there's been some guys that have made the most of that opportunity, and I think that Johnston's a really good defender for Canada and in MLS, and I think that'd be a great move for him because he'd be taking obviously that next step in his development, but also going to a team that has Champions League aspirations,
Yeah.
winning the Premiership over Rangers, winning the domestic trophies, and and then that could just be another springboard. I think it's every year you see guys from Celtic that end up scoring 10, 15, 20 goals, or whether they're a defender and they're one of the best defenders in the league, and then the next year or two then they make that jump to the Premier League or Bundesliga or somewhere else. So I think it'd be a great step for him, and like you said, I thought he definitely stood out for Canada in two very tough and different games,
Yeah.
obviously against Belgium, and not many teams, are gonna hang with Belgium as close, um, as they did, and then the Croatia game, obviously the talent came out for Croatia later in the match, but overall, I thought Canada did well to come out early and at least fight for 90 minutes.
Yeah, then Kamal Miller was unfortunate on one of the goals coming out and misjudging the timing of the ball. And I guess for sort of Montreal fans, they're hoping, oh, maybe that's put some other clubs off who may have been monitoring him somewhat, because this Montreal side seems to be getting decimated at the moment. And another one is Ishmael Kone, who's really stepped into the side. And you've been impressed with how well he's been performing for the national team within his first year in MLS.
Yeah, I think it was funny because I think every time I saw Canada kind of get picked apart and maybe they cleared it for a corner, it was Kamal Miller who was punching the ground in frustration, I think wondering where his teammates were.
Yeah,
And he's that type of player. I know he plays with his heart on his sleeve, and obviously for his country, and then for Montreal as well. And I think he would be a big loss, I think, if
yeah.
CF Montreal transferred him or wherever he would go next. I'm sure a lot of teams would be um in the mix for a physical defender like that. And then Kone, I think, has been linked with Watford lately in the EFL
Yeah, that's right.
Championship. Would be obviously a great get for them because they want to get back into the Premier League, sooner rather than later, and could be a nice under the radar signing for them. Especially, we've seen some other guys that have made the move from Watford elsewhere. Hernandez with the Columbus Crew recently this past season left there and did really well in MLS, and this could be a kind of the vice versa, because I think Kone obviously think 20 years old, 19, 20, still really young, and shown some really good moments in MLS and also with Canada.
Yeah, definitely. It's been really good. I mean, the Canada have had a big number of MLS players in their squad. Cavallini came on, who's been released by the Whitecaps. So it'll be interesting to see whether he remains in MLS next year or not. I'll have to see where he goes. I thought Richie Laryea really did had a standout performance after being let go, sent back on loan to Toronto from Nottingham Forest. And I think he's really shown them that maybe they should have kept hold of him for a little while, considering the money Nottingham Forest have been splashing around bringing in new players. They definitely had a decent one there.
Yeah, I thought Laryea maybe got a kind of a tough go at Forest because when he came in, I actually remember being part of Steve Cooper's press conference when I think it was when Laryea might have just been back in training with Forest and was able to ask him kind of just about the type of player he is and what he thought back then. This is when they were still, I think, in the championship, because I was asking about him and also Ethan Horvath, who was filling in the time. And he even said that Laryea is a good talent. He works hard. He knows his job. He works for the team. And kind of disappointing he didn't really get maybe a proper run out with the team. Cause I think he maybe came on as a sub here and there, but never anything consistent.
Yeah,
So curious to see what his role is next, because obviously the Premier League season going on. I doubt he goes back to Forest and is able to get into the 18 there with them fighting relegation right now. So I'm curious to see if they loan him to maybe a championship side, or they're able to, I don't know if it's what he wants, but maybe Toronto is able to get him back, or another team in MLS, because he definitely obviously is experienced in the league.
yeah. Yeah, I imagine Toronto do all they can to keep hold of him. I think at the moment, the way he performed and the way they needed help at the back as well through much of last season in MLS. Moving on to Japan, Costa Rica, and after a humiliating defeat to Spain, Brian Oviedo and his teammates got a 1-0 win against Japan. A great comeback from the side. Who give themselves a bit of hope going in. They now need a win against Germany, I believe, to qualify for the knockout rounds. But another player who's come on, Daniel Chacon, came on, Colorado Rapids 2 player to the side from MLS Next Pro. So we've not only got MLS players, but an MLS Next Pro player playing in the World Cup, which is incredible for the country in the league, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a talented player. I was able to see him a little bit in X Pro with Colorado Rapids too, and still at a good age of 21 years old. Obviously had a good amount of experience before he made the move to the United States. I think had over 100 appearances in the Costa Rican League. And now has 9 caps for his country. So definitely a player to watch over the next season or so. I think curious to see what happens next with him. And but overall, really good bounce back performance from Costa Rica. Keisher Fuller had the goal. Actually, it was funny. I was reminiscing. I think I saw his first international goal when they lost to the U.S.
Okay.
Men's national team in World Cup qualifying, the 2-1 game in Columbus, which was, I think, better known for the Serginho Dest missile goal that night. But yeah, great performance from Costa Rica. Way to bounce back. Obviously, you get drubbed like that. It's probably hard to get that out of your mind. But
Yeah.
they bounced back, got a huge win, and now have a great chance of advancing.
Yes, definitely. I mean, Germany have they managed to get that goal, which means that Germany are still fighting for something, which I guess is not what Costa Rica would have wanted, but, nonetheless, have to see how they get on. And a good point again, a good win over Japan at least is a good springboard for being, I'm sure, a lot more competitive than they were against Spain. Also, over the weekend, we had Tunisia, Australia, and Dejanek. Columbus Crew came off the bench for the last 15 minutes. And a side who I thought who knocked out Peru in the qualifiers to arrive for the World Cup, they seem like they'd probably be the whipping boys to a degree of this group. Bit of an athletic side, but lacking a bit of quality. But they're sitting in second, and they know a draw with Denmark is enough to take them through to the next round. And it's pretty impressive from the Australians as well, and Dejanek at the back there with them.
Yeah, definitely. I think Australia doing well again. It's kind of similar to Costa Rica, where you're able to kind of show that short term, short memory and get over a lopsided defeat, because they did hang with France for a little bit and obviously had the lead, and then
Yeah,
France showed their quality. But great result for them. 1-0. Mitchell Duke had the goal, and really intrigued the way Australia play. They really bring it in a bunch of different ways, and really good outside midfielders with Lecky and Goodwin. And then you have Riley McGree, who is at Middlesbrough now, but was on loan with Charlotte. Didn't
yeah.
really get a proper kind of time with Charlotte, but and then Duke, the other forward who had the goal. So I really think this could be a decent, good chance for Australia, because I've been maybe a little bit disappointed with Denmark so far, but I think anything's possible. And I think that Australia, if they're able to, play well defensively, Dejanek, whether he, starts, I don't know if he will, but another good option to have off the bench, especially like against Tunisia, trying to close out a 1-0 win.
Yeah, they are definitely, and I agree with you saying with Denmark. I think a good side defensively and midfield, very good, but it's just the quality in the final third for them. They seem to be lacking, which could be exactly what Australia need as they come up against them. If this gives them definitely a chance, which you probably wouldn't have given them before the World Cup started. There were 2 other games that we should really come to, and one of them, Argentina getting a 2-0 win over Mexico. Actually played the full 90 for Mexico, but couldn't help his side avoid defeat against a very talented Argentinian side that eventually made their way through. Mexico need to win against Saudi Arabia next game and hope Poland beat Argentina, but it's going to be pretty tough and a very a big ask from the Mexicans there. And it was another decent performance from Lionel Messi, who we probably wouldn't have talked about in an MLS sense, other than the rumors swirling around once again that he could well be on his way back, on his way to Inter Miami for the next year.
Yeah, I think it was obviously tough game for Mexico being able to try to stop a guy like Messi. And then, we've seen the amount of quality that he has, but also the amount of quality that the Argentinian team has, as a unit, a lot of veteran guys. And, Mexico did well to hang with them for, 50, 55 plus minutes, but then, a little bit of quality there from Messi on the goal. And then, setting up Fernandez for the insurance goal there at the end. So, good performance, obviously needed performance from Argentina. Obviously after the shock loss to Saudi Arabia, and Mexico kind of again been a little bit disappointed. Like you said with Denmark. The quality in the final third. I think Mexico is a good example of that because, a lot of experience, a lot of different guys you can put in the into that attacking third, and not a lot of guys clicking right now with confidence. And unfortunately, it comes up into a must-win game.
Yeah, that's right. It's it's going to be an interesting end to that group. And I think we better go on to the other one of the ones today, the early kickoff. Cameroon Serbia was a incredibly exciting game for everyone who was up in time. Especially for those who are Seattle Sounders fans. I think it was a 3 o'clock kickoff this morning for them. But Nuhu got his chance to shine once again for the national team, who took the lead, conceded 3 after that to Serbia, but managed to fight back. Nuhu did pretty well, trying to get a few blocks in. A couple of the goals, he was throwing his body in and doing his best for the side. But Serbia had a period of complete control and attacked fantastically, but Cameroon showed a great deal of effort to come back in and get the draw. And now they'll need a win against Brazil next, which is a little bit harder than can be said, but a decent start and a decent performance from the Cameroon side.
Yeah, definitely. And especially too, because I don't think many people really gave Cameroon much of a chance in that group when you look at the likes of Brazil and then Switzerland and then also Serbia, who's kind of flown under the radar in the last couple years, with their experienced guys. But yeah, it definitely was an early kickoff for sure. And I think it's funny the early 5 a.m. kickoffs here for me on the East Coast sometimes seem to be the most thrilling compared to the ones at 2 o'clock Eastern time when I'm wide awake at that point. But I guess that's how you get the people up. But overall, it was a really good game. Great fight from Cameroon to get back at a point. Like you said, it'll be tough to get a win against Brazil. Maybe I mean, I guess, has Brazil already clinched the top spot now? I mean, they're 3 points ahead of Switzerland, so I'm wondering if they do any type of rotating at that point.
Possibly. But I guess with the squad they've got, even the rotation is
yeah,
even those bench players aren't particularly bad themselves, are they?
Yeah, but I think Cameroon's been pretty fun to watch because obviously you knew who with we've seen him in MLS. Look at some other guys, Choupo-Moting obviously been around the block a few times with several teams. Mbomo with Brentford's been really a nice player to watch in the Premier League. So and then obviously been a little bit disappointed not to see the local boy for me, Olivier Mbizo with the Philadelphia Union. Hasn't been able to get in yet, but the right back for Cameroon. But obviously experienced guy in front of him, but another good talent, I guess, for the future for Cameroon.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw the right back go down with he landed awkwardly on his ankle, and I thought, we might be able to get to see Mbizo in ways you don't want to, but the guy managed to keep his strength up and keep going for the rest of the game. But hopefully we'll get a chance to see him in the final game. It'd be good to at least get him to see some of the field while away in the World Cup for his side. But those are the key ones from this weekend that obviously involved MLS players, and we look ahead now to the final games of each group. So now we're going back to just two kickoff times. So each group games are kicking off at the same time, obviously. So we need to be following that. And yeah, we look ahead, as we mentioned at the beginning, to the USMNT's group. They will be taking on Iran while England will be playing Wales. And the US know, obviously, that only a win will do going into this final game. We've got our own Walker Zimmerman at the back there. Shaq Moore came on, Kellen Acosta. So we've got a number of MLS based players still within this squad, and a lot going around this game, as we mentioned at the top, with comments from Jurgen Klinsmann on TV, which Carlos Queiroz took offence to. A number of other problems, and obviously a lot of decades of political issues going on between the two sides. How are this young side going to cope with what's going on around it, and just focus on the game and try and ensure that the US are in the knockouts?
Yeah, I think, for a lot of these young guys, obviously they really did a great job, I thought, against England, and for a lot of them, the biggest game of their international careers, and obviously a lot of them making their debuts in this World Cup, in this specific tournament. So I think this will, obviously, they know that the pressure is on now. They got to get a win against Iran, and and then they don't really have to look at the scoreboard watching elsewhere. They just got to focus on their business. And I think too, it's pretty unique how it's set up, right? Because probably nobody expected the group standings to be how they are right now,
Yeah.
with the US chasing Iran and them sitting in second. And but I think overall the confidence from that England game, I thought they did it outstanding, really, in terms of fighting against England, making things tough. Against the Matt Turner, really didn't have a lot to do. He made that one key save against Mason Mount in the first half, and then Christian Pulisic hit the crossbar, and so I a little worried just with the final third, right? Because you want to see kind of which striker will step up. We've seen we saw Haji Wright against England. We've seen Josh Sargent. We haven't seen Jesus Ferreira yet. There's been rumblings about whether we could see Tim Weah playing as that false nine against Iran, and maybe you bring in a Brendan Aronson, or you bring in Gio Reyna. I'm still kind of shocked that we haven't seen Gio Reyna more, but that's for Greg Berhalter to kind of figure out. So but I think overall they can't overlook Iran, because they got a drubbing against England, but they bounced back in a great way against a stubborn Wales side. So, and they got 2 goals late. They have really good quality with Taremi, who plays for Porto, obviously other veteran guys in the squad. So I think they'll be able to kind of, silence the outside noise. And I know there's a lot of it right now, but they just probably, they want to go out there and play. They want to represent their country well, and leave all the other stuff, I think, to the side, because this is kind of what matters, right? This is what gets you into that next round. And obviously if they don't advance, you maybe you look at Greg Berhalter, in the next week or two being fired after this.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on it for all of them, isn't it, really? And I was listening to sort of some of the English media about the game between England and the US, and there was a lot of concerns about boring England. The game was terrible. They didn't enjoy it. But watching it from a US point of view as well, it seemed that Berhalter had set his team up very well. They actually completely nullified England. Zimmerman bounced back brilliantly from giving away that penalty to Gareth Bale, who went and converted in the first game. Defensively, they were really well set up. Players came on throughout the game and did exactly what was needed. But it's going to be a very different opponent to England. England wanted to dominate possession. They wanted to try and go out and control the game, but failed. I think this is going to be a little bit more like the Wales game, where Iran will want to sit off and give the US the chance to build possession and try and hit them on the counter attack. And the way they played against Wales, they only, after about 60 minutes, they started to tire. Wales got back into the game from that. Do you think Berhalter's really learned something from that game, and the way that he managed to keep his side competitive for the full 90 minutes against England gives a little bit of hope for how they might manage the game against Iran?
I think you will definitely have learned something for sure. I think, I think they did well against England, where again, just that overall, unity in the squad. I thought they won a lot of their, one-on-one battles. I thought Anthony Robinson did an amazing
Mm,
job in
yeah.
neutralizing Bukayo Saka, who had scored 2 goals previously. Guys familiar with each other, from the Premier League, and then a lot of those other attacking pieces. We didn't really see much from Harry Kane, didn't see much from Sterling.
No, from none of them.
Nothing really. I mean, I know he set up Mount for that shot and that Turner save, but Bellingham, didn't really see much of him after a really good first game. So I think Berhalter definitely will take something from both games for sure. I'm curious to see how he lines the team up. Again with who he starts, at the main striker position. I know there's been people that have saying about taking Weston McKennie out of the starting 11, so you could start a Brendan Aronson in midfield, rather than like on a wing position. But I think that McKennie just gives you so much, in terms of duels and his aerial abilities and his, kind of he plays along that kind of that fine line, right? Like that you would
Mm.
see from a Premier League, midfielder. But he stays within the lines, So and I think Adams and Zimmerman have been the players of the tournament for them so far. Just those two. So yeah, I think Berhalter will have learned something from it for sure. They're going to want to have that possession, but they have to make use of that possession, right? Because this it's win or go home, and so far they've been pretty unconvincing in the final third, with the exception of that really good team goal against Wales, and then Pulisic hit the crossbar. But other than that, there's not really much that pops up in my head of wow, that was a really great attack or counter attack from this team.
Yeah, that's been the issue, hasn't it? Yeah, that final third, and I think there'll be some chops and changes possibly. I'm not sure if he'll go back to that sort of 4-3-3 rather than the 4-4-2, as they won't be defending quite as regularly. But yeah, we'll have to see. Have to see how he comes up against it. And obviously, Gareth Bale and his Wales side go up against England, and if the US manage to win this and Wales get a surprise win over England, the US will go through top of the group. Can you see Gareth Bale trudging around for 90 minutes again, or do you think this is about time? Maybe they gave him the LAFC style treatment and bring him on for the last 20 minutes and try and shake things up.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Gareth Bale, obviously, we know his past, in England with Spurs, and he's played against a lot of these guys in the past, and he's gonna, probably a bit disappointed with how they've, done so far in this group. Yes, they fought back against the U.S., but they didn't do well to capitalize against Iran. So I think you're gonna see Bale start. He's a competitor. He wants to be out there for his country. It's been however many years it's been since they, were in the World Cup last before this. So I think they're going to want to maybe pull a shock here. They've probably seen the footage of, watched plenty of film of how the U.S. kind of frustrated England for 90 minutes, and maybe they could do the same. And they have definitely some quality there with not only Bale, but I think Brennan Johnson, and then obviously the more experienced guys, the Aaron Ramseys, the Joe Allens, the Ben Davies. So there's gonna be a lot of guys out there, I think, that they're gonna want to put in a good performance against England and knock them off, because I think they've seen how kind of poorly the England played the US, and probably feel they could take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously the rivalry plays into that as well between the two sides, and wanting to go away with giving their fans something. I think if they limp out of this one against England, then all those Wales fans that have come and done the journey, coming back to draw against the US isn't going to send them with much happiness on their way home. So I'm sure they'll do everything in this next game to send them at least home with a bit of pride. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. They've got plenty of pace, like you say, with Brennan Johnson, players like Dan James as well, who can really cause a problem. And Kiefer Moore might be one of the few people that can actually compete with Harry Maguire in the box for these crosses coming in, which sadly the US couldn't really capitalize on at all from corners. It was quite simple for the big English defender. But we'll have to see. That one's Tuesday, so we'll be excited to see how that one goes. We'll be glued in, but well, keep you abreast of all the MLS players who will hopefully be making their way into the knockout rounds in the next week or so. Larry, thanks again for joining me today, and let's hope to see as many MLS players as possible in the knockouts.
Yeah, hopefully, man. I'm been excited so far with what I've seen, and now I'm a little happy I can sleep in past 5 o'clock and enjoy the games at 10
Definitely.
a.m.
Yeah, a lot easier for us.
Right, and I'm glad I don't live on the West Coast. I'll say that.
Yeah, I can imagine it's very, very difficult. As anyone on the West Coast hearing East Coast Americans complaining about the time zone must be incredibly frustrated. I can only imagine. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Larry.
Yep, thanks, Mike.